Greetings, my dears, Chryssie here, and yes, for the first time ever, I am going to do a movie review. You may not think I'm qualified to be doing movie reviews, especially for one as big budget as the new Aquaman film. But then again, you're watching a review on YouTube. Anybody doing reviews on YouTube isn't really qualified. Regardless, I understand that it's not the kind of content that my channel uploads, but I'll explain more about that later and just get straight into the review. Let's just get straight to the point. Is Aquaman a good film? Yes, it's a really good film. I really enjoyed it. It inspired me enough to make a review on it. However, it is not a perfect film. There are many fundamental flaws with this film that stuck out like a sore thumb and did, to an extent, ruin the experience for me. I did find myself yawning at various points that were just unnecessary and drawn out, and I'll go into more detail about those now. All I'm going to say is that from here on out, there are going to be spoilers for the film along the way because it's unavoidable to not talk about these subjects. Now I'm going to get some of the shittier things about the movie out of the way first, starting with Black Manta. Yeah, he sucked. Everything about this character sucked. And there's one simple reason for it. Because at the start of the film, his sort of origin story was actually quite a nice one, and I thought he'd make a really big impact by the end of the movie. But when he did reappear in his new, freshly made costume, I laughed. I actually physically laughed in the cinema. As soon as I saw his costume and those stupid big red eyes, I couldn't help but chuckle. Because it just looked ridiculous, it looked out of place, there was no point of him being there, and then Aquaman defeats him, and then that's that. It was a completely pointless sequence, he was a completely useless addition to the movie. He wasn't the main villain, or anything like that. He was great for the initial starting sequence, and I quite liked it, but they should have left it at that. He should have probably been a villain that appears later on in perhaps a second Aquaman movie. He should not have been used in this one. He felt really, really out of place. Where everything else in this film, the costume designs, the CGI, everything looked so fantastic. Like Aquaman in his usual sort of superhero getup actually looked really, really good, as well as some of the Atlantean soldiers with their really futuristic guns and suits of armor. Black Manta just looked really, really out of place. It looked stupid. Now, I have done my research, I'm not being retarded. I know that Black Manta does look like that. The movie did do his character justice in terms of its design. However, it just was not necessary in this movie setup. Plus, they brought him out in broad daylight. It just did not look right. He really should have been an underwater enemy, something that Aquaman had to fight underwater, because I just think that would have looked awesome. In fact, the whole sequence in Italy was almost pointless. It was just so that they could find this one location that leads them to the sacred trident that they had been looking for. All it served to do was drag out the movie, and that's another big flaw that I had about this film. It was ridiculously long, or at least it felt ridiculously long. It was only 2.5 hours long at most. It didn't help that there's 30-minute ad breaks at the start, but what can you do? You know, you expect that when you go to the cinema nowadays. No, my issue lies with a lot of story elements that just weren't necessary. I'm going to talk about the story a little bit here. The story's good. It's nothing to write home about. It's a really generic sort of superhero story where they go on an adventure to find this mystical item, and then this mystical item magically fixes everything. You know, the story wasn't cringy or anything like that. It wasn't not worth watching, you know, because one thing that I have to commend this movie for is it was beautiful. The CGI and special effects in this film were outstanding. The whole experience was fantastic. And that's another thing, Aquaman himself, he looked really, really cool in the whole thing. I think the actor did a great job playing this character. I do have one complaint about some of the CGI though, and that is just sometimes it was just a bit too much. Now, my dad has eye problems as it is, you know, he wears glasses all the time. He had to close his eyes through most of the film because it was just too dark for him. It wasn't too dark, but I think it was just because of the cinema setting, whatever. But there was too much going on the screen a lot of the time. There ended up being this massive wall that appears near the end of the film, and it's just too much. It's beautiful, but there's just so many things going on. You know, it's all of these aquatic animals that these people are riding, and then there's loads of shooting and lasers and all sorts of crazy, crazy stuff. It's just a little bit too much. There are another few sort of minor complaints. For instance, though I found it really cool, was this female protagonist he was traveling around with. I can't quite remember her name, it began with M or something. She had a really cool power, which was basically, all I can say is water bending, where she could manipulate water and turn it into things and fire it at people and blast it, or create vacuums in water. But at no point in the movie did it explain how she had that power and why she was the only one that had it. And I don't think she utilized it as much as she could have, but it was still cool to watch. Like, the effects on her were fantastic. Another thing about the movie that I did and also did not like were a lot of the action sequences. The fight scenes were really cool, very well directed. The issue I have with them is they were very one-sided. It was very typical superhero fashion, where the protagonist dominated multiple enemies and didn't really seem to take a hit from any of them. And I'm talking more about the female protagonist in this film more than Aquaman. Aquaman is Aquaman, you know, he's pretty invulnerable to most bullets and steel and things like that, unless it's Atlantean steel, I'm guessing. But no, this female protagonist seemed to kick ass and rarely get beaten about. I think she got knocked on her ass at least once, and that was it. Otherwise, she's bicycle kicking people in the face and then just wrecking their crap, you know, when there's about 4 guys around her with swords. And I like it when a hero sort of takes a bit of damage, you know, takes a bit of the fall, you know, not that they're completely invulnerable to attack. And we'll end the review on one final question. Do I recommend you see this movie? That's actually a very difficult question. To see it in the cinema, if you've got the expendable change, then yes, by all means. It is a fantastic film. It is a spectacle to watch. It does need to be viewed in a cinema or a cinema-like setting if you've got a really nice setup at home, for example. Most films always have plot holes or stuff like this, but these ones stick out like a sore thumb. But otherwise, the CGI, the special effects, the action sequences more than make up for it. I'd just like to say thank you all so much for watching. I know this is a bit unorthodox for me to do on my channel, but I felt like I wanted to get my opinions about this film out. I might do more film reviews. I might start looking into that. If you did want to see more, then please let me know in the comments down below. Or leave a like, that would help as well. As I said, I know it's not something we upload much on my channel, but as I've mentioned before, I upload whatever the hell I want on my channel. There's not really a set theme. But yes, thank you all so much for watching, my dears, and I'll see you all in the next one. I'll be waiting.